All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I am Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. I am back from Northeast Philadelphia, Drew, where the dollar eaters kept on flowing for myself, Matthew Gary, Michael Smith, and Lawrence Jackson. It's the first time I've done 2 hours of television while drinking throughout, which is a lot of fun. But I'm glad to be back home in the fine state of Connecticut to talk some football with you. But we're also going to talk NBA, given the season tips off so soon. But let's start with football. What was your biggest takeaway from the Sunday slate? And we are recording this in the second quarter of Sunday Night Football as Dallas Goedert has just run into the end zone.
Well, you know what they say about Dollaritas, Jay. You get what you pay for. The Sunday slate so far, leading into Sunday Night Football, has been magical for me. The only serious took it on the chin loss I have on the card today was Lions. Otherwise, this was as good as you could ask for. I think it behooves us to start by recognizing the incredible accomplishment of one Mr. Bill Belichick, who wins his 300th game as an 8.5-point dog. And actually, 7.5-point dog. Patriots took a little bit of money into close. Not sure if you saw that, but there was a pretty clear sign there that the Patriots were the sharp side. And they not only was that really kind of a never in doubt cover, but really, really impressive hard-fought win for that team. And the Bills defense, kind of like we said, a lot of questions to be answered by that group. Man, oh man, the defensive side of the Patriots, they were stubbing their toes against the likes of the Raiders, and the Bills just made it look easy for them, which is a bad sign, I think, for the long-term hopes of the Bills competing in a very tough AFC. So that was kind of the obvious first place to start, and then among the other morning games, the other one that had especially significant consequence. The game that you maybe had circled for the best game on the morning slate was Detroit-Baltimore, and it was not the best game, Jay. In fact, that was an absolute butt kicking. And I think the kind of key takeaway that shocked me, because again, I lost with the Lions. I had Lions money line. I thought they were going to compete in this game. They got blown out in the trenches on both sides of the ball, which is how that team is effectively built. I'm going to chalk that up to this was their one minus, Z-score game. As you go through a 17-game season, teams are going to have 2 or 3 of these. And I think I want to just attribute that to hey, these guys weren't ready to play today, and the Ravens were. And this was an absolute shellacking. But to see the Lions get beat in the trenches was pretty astounding, because I thought that was where their strength was. I thought that was how they were going to ultimately stay in games when they were at a negative game state, and also be able to put away games. And it was not to be. Jared Goff with 53 pass attempts in this one. He was wildly inefficient, and I think you have to probably put Lamar Jackson as the third choice right now in the MVP race after Pat and Tua. I think that's not crazy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Lamar's quietly been playing at a really high level all season. He's been undone by drops. He really now could be 7-0. They got screwed at the end of the Colts game with no PI being called against on the guy who was covering Zay Flowers. That should have ended that game. And then the fact they lost that Pittsburgh game was just an absolute mess. And that was somewhat on Lamar because he threw an awful pick. But that Ravens team has been building. And look, the book on Detroit, I think, is that rightly or wrongly, the knock on them is that they haven't really beaten anyone. Even last year when they started 1-6, their 2 big wins were against the Packers team that, to be fair, was playing pretty well by the end of the season, but it was still a Packers team that went 8-9 in the end. And then the other teams they beat in that run towards the end of last year, where they won 8 of their last 10, Chicago, Giants, Minnesota, Jets, Bears again. They had a good win over Jacksonville, but that's when the Jags were scuffling a little bit. And now this year, they haven't beaten anyone outside of a 1-point win over a Chiefs team that was missing Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, and had Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney dropping everything in sight. So look, that's simplifying things because, if you beat the Jags 40-14 last year, if you're blowing out teams left and right from the midpoint of last season, you clearly not a bad team, but I think the idea that the Lions are in the same class as, no one put them in the same class as the 49ers, but that they could be right there with the Cowboys and Eagles.
Sure. That was my thinking heading into this game, and I don't know that I feel that way. But again, I want to write it off to just this was a bad day for them. It sounds like you're more inclined to lean into their paper Lions.
I think that they're like 2.5 points better than your average team. I think they're basically, they're NFC Jacksonville is what I think they are, where they're not quite at this level.
That's not crazy.
Here's the other thing. Here's my big takeaway from the slate today. Patrick Mahomes is just so much better than every other player in the NFL. It's unbelievable. And the confidence, just being heavily invested in Mahomes for MVP, just the confidence whenever he gets the ball that he's going to make the right decision. And sometimes it's not going to come off, but he's playing right now at a level that I can't remember many athletes full stop getting to. This is like watching, Roger Federer in 2007 or whatever. He is just out of his mind. Even the bad plays, like his turnover today, there's an arm punt where he knows that he can throw it up on 3rd and long. And if he gets caught for an interception 50 yards down the field, like the upside of attempting that pass is just so much greater. He was magnificent today. He is, for me, getting pretty close to even money for MVP. We'll see what happens with Tua in this game. But the fact that the Bills defense just it seems like they've just lost too many bodies with White and Milano and Daquan Jones, and they already had question marks at corner, and the D-line isn't what it was. The fact they let Mac Jones march down the field for a touchdown to win the game, let alone a tying field goal, that's a red flag. Don't think they're in a good spot. The Bills.
Yeah. No, we agree, and also Josh Allen looks hurt.
And Josh Allen, I just think the turnovers are just always going to be part of his game, and it's a little unfair because he is probably the second best quarterback in the NFL, but just watching Allen and then watching Mahomes, and Allen probably has better, I don't know. Allen's weapons haven't been great so far this season, but certainly you watch what Mahomes was able to do without Kelsey, and his numbers were deflated because of the drops, but just the plays that he was making that he could control versus what Allen does with his cast. I don't think they're in the same tier. So I think the big takeaway is that the Chiefs are the clear best team in the AFC until the Bills sort themselves out, if they even can. I think
in the NFL. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what the Niners do tonight when you people are listening. But they have their own question marks. Before we move on, just the other game I wanted to bring up, just Cleveland and Indianapolis is one of the most bizarre games of football I've ever seen. Really interesting game theory at the end with Stefanski with the play calling, because there wasn't much time left, but the Colts still had I think all 3 of their timeouts at one point. It's only a couple. And as someone who is very invested in the Browns long term, and also invested in Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year, and Garrett DPOY, which now looks great. Wouldn't it look so good if they'd lost, 38-33 to the Indianapolis Colts? So I was very much hoping they would pull that out. And I was begging for him to run it every play at the goal line, particularly when there was 25 seconds left. Like, just run it twice. Just run it twice. Doesn't matter you have no timeouts. You'll be able to get 2 plays off, 2 runs up the gut. And they do it on the second play, and Kareem Hunt just gets in. And that's probably the difference between, them being a contender for their division and being, close to dead in the water, given how good Baltimore look. But what do you make of Cleveland? What do you make of their defense, particularly after they gave up 38 points to Indianapolis?
Yeah, I need to rewatch that game. That's at the top of my list. I had a small play on Colts team total under, and that lost in the first 2 quarters. So I stopped watching that game. But every time I checked in, I was like, man, what in the world is happening? Like, I know that the most important thing to figure out with the Browns is what in the world is going on with Deshaun Watson. If they are out there and the defense plays like they do today, and they're, have PJ Walker under center on the road, they're not beating the likes of anyone else in their division. Sorry, they're not beating the Browns. I mean, they're not beating the Ravens, the Steelers, or the Bengals. Not with that offense. No, very one dimensional, and they leaned into it, and that worked out for them today. But yeah, that was. If you simulate games You're like, I'm going to go with 10,000 simulations of this Chiefs Colts game. This Browns Colts game. I think something like 1 out of 10,000 might have produced that game, right? And when you have that weird of an outlier of an outcome, I almost think you have to throw it out to a degree. Gardner Minshew's ability to kind of really make the pass defense for the Browns look very, very, very average, I think is maybe the key takeaway, because Gardner Minshew is not a good quarterback. Like, he is not as good as some of the guys they're going to have to face over the balance of this season. He's not as good as the guys they're going to have to face in division later this year. So that is, I think, a big sign for worry. But I think for our purposes, the key takeaway should be Myles Garrett is on another level. Like, that was a superhuman performance by him. In the first half of the game, he had 2 sacks, 2 fumbles. One of them generated a touchdown, and he had a blocked field goal on to top it all off. Like, that was in a half of football. Like, yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous that he's able to produce at that level. And I think, he's going to give Parsons all he can handle in that race going forward, unless the defense just falls apart, because apparently there's cracks, which I didn't realize until seeing the Colts of all teams really kind of point those out.
I think the thing with Cleveland is
weird game.
You look at the names and they look like good names, but outside of Myles Garrett, it's like, hold on, how is this team historically great through 6 weeks?
Sure.
Whereas 2 weeks in, we're talking about the Cowboys as an all-time great defense, and you look at the names there, and it's like, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, the defensive line, Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore at corner. Like, it made a bit more sense. Whereas with the Browns, it's like, I guess I've always liked Greg Newsome. Is he this amazing guy all of a sudden?
That's a very good point. Yeah, Jeremiah. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. That's a fun name to say. Yeah, I didn't know he was like all pro. I don't think he's all pro. But you're absolutely right. Some of their cornerbacks are boom or bust, and they busted today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I still think it's the best defense in football. I think you throw it out to some degree, but also a bit of a red flag, and they're probably not the historical outlier that they were looking like through the first. Yeah, they're through their first 5 games, the first 6 weeks of the season. Let's quickly touch on some of the openers. We won't run through every single one of these, but were there any openers that jumped out to you in particular on the Week 8 slate?
Yeah, the Week 8 slate looks really, really competitive. There's going to be some fun handicaps here. Couple of them that immediately jumped out. I thought the fact that you saw the look ahead flip to Indianapolis favored over New Orleans. What?
Yeah, that was
Excuse
the one
me?
for me. I don't understand that.
Was there a key injury in the Saints game that I missed? Because that does not look correct to me. And we can probably set aside and dedicate an entire episode to just trying to break down who the Saints are. But the Saints have multiple ways they can beat you, and I really do not think that the Colts should be favored against that team, at least as long as, and for the foreseeable future, Gardner Minshew is going to be under center. So that one is interesting to me. Houston, Carolina is a fascinating handicap, because you have Carolina now changing offensive coordinator. Thomas Brown's taking over the play calling there. Houston, both teams coming off of bye, and Houston in general has overperformed so far to this point in the season with their rookie quarterback. And I think expecting CJ Stroud to cover 3 points on the road is not right. Like, that's pretty clearly, do you have the stomach to back Carolina and their new play caller? Need to get some defensive injury information out of Carolina before I jump in there, but leaning some absolute NFC South stinkers this week, Jay. Yeah. It's going to be that kind of a week.
The 2 lines that jumped out to me were the 2 participants in a pretty, I guess it wasn't an awful Thursday night football game, but certainly wasn't the most well-played Thursday night football game. But the fact that the Saints, with extended rest against that Colts team, are dogs is surprising. I also think the Jags should be more than 1.5 point favorites at the Steelers, who I guess got another win, but not convinced at all by Kenny Pickett or by that team. Still, I don't understand how that team is 4-2. It has to be surely one of the weakest 4-2 teams that we've seen. So those were the 2 that jumped out to me. I think Cowboys -5.5. I would be shocked if that line stays under 6 as they play home to the Rams. So those were the ones that let down.
Can I ask you about Pittsburgh real quick? So if they beat Jacksonville, is that time to tweet the Undertaker gif with my Tomlin Coach of the Year take? Because how is he doing it, Jay? This team's not good. And they won convincingly today, too. Like, it wasn't fluky. It really wasn't. I thought they were the better team. I mean, or at least I thought, like, I didn't think there was anything in the result that suggested this was, like, just a wrong result.
No, but the problem is that like the Baltimore and Cleveland wins were the wrong result.
Yes, they were. Yes, and also the Raiders result was too. Honestly, like the Raiders gave them that game too.
Here's the thing: I'm not sure how this will work in the discourse, but the reasons, and I agree, Tomlin he's alive now certainly because with Dan Campbell losing, it looks like as we record, Mike McDaniel's probably going to lose. It's a bit of a weaker field overall. The reason why I'd be skeptical of Tomlin is, one, I still don't think the team's very good. I don't think they're going to win 12 games. But then two, I think the difference between Tomlin and, say, Daboll last year is I think that Daboll had, you could see his coaching on the field and the fact that they were making good decisions and had good play design, and he fixed Daniel Jones, and there were these things you can talk to. I think people think the Steelers are just not very good and they're just kind of randomly winning games. But there's time for that to change. And look, if they get to 12-5, people will be like, how on earth is this team when they're playing and they look like this? How did they get 12 wins? And then I think Tomlin would be very live. But it's a big game against Jacksonville. Because if he loses that, then he's probably
big game for Jacksonville too. Jacksonville has extended rest for this one, and then they go into their bye week, so they're playing one game over the balance of like 26 days or something insane. Like it's a really, really unusual schedule quirk for them, where they're getting a lot of time to get right. The one other look at I wanted to mention is if you have an appetite for the Seattle Seahawks against the aforementioned Browns, who are a one-dimensional team and can really only run the ball and are going up against a very good run defense, I think you need to get in soon, because 2.5 is going to turn to 3 here in a matter of moments, if I had to say.
Yep. Let's see what happens as well with that quarterback situation. I mean, he was cleared to come back in, Deshaun, but they seem to feel like PJ Walker was going to give them better chance to win the game.
Did you see Jim throwing before he went out? Yeah. Oh my God! Why did they greenlight him in the first place?
Yeah,
he's not right.
Yeah. Well, at least he can cast aside the idea that, he was faking it.
Clearly. No, but like,
very, very messed up.
We got to do a whole Browns deep dive at some point, because like we saw the clips. They tweeted him out. Everything was tweeted out. Like he looked terrible throwing in practice, to the tune where I thought he was like trying to send a message to the coaches that they shouldn't put him out there. They put him out there anyway, and he was terrible. So I do not understand what is going on there.
Yeah, very strange. All right, before we get to Monday Night Football, a reminder that this coming Sunday night, it's an interconference clash when DJ Moore and the Bears, the suddenly feel-good Bears, travel to Southern California. It's a battle. Justin Herbert is kind of filled with bad vibes at the moment, and the Chargers. Get ready for kickoff when coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. It's difficult watching Justin Herbert today, kind of a forlorn figure on the bench, just kind of sitting there, built up by eminent competence and solid quarterbacking play, but just not the deity on the other sideline, Mahomes.
I enjoyed it.
That game going one way, and so it did. All right, 49ers, perhaps the other best team in the NFL, with the Chiefs as 7-point favorites at the Minnesota Vikings. Lines bouncing around 6.5 to 7. The news that McCaffrey is likely going to play, so tip it back towards a touchdown. The total is 43. Are you concerned about the Niners after last week, or do you think that they get right and they blow out the Vikings?
I see. So I guess I'm not like flashing concern, but I do think they're a bet against here. And it's, like there was an underlying theme to everything I played this week. And actually, but even before we get there, I should acknowledge, for some reason, I have had a really, really tough time reading these Monday Night Football games. I don't know why. I don't know if there's something specific about these games that is just, it's hitting me in my blind spot. But I have
too many Dollaritas on the Sunday, and then it's
yeah.
Monday morning.
I don't understand it, man. I think I've won one play on Monday Night Football all year, and it was the week 1 under, and that was because Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. So I can't even really, victory lap that. But this one I think is Vikings are past, and the reason is really straightforward, which is that like we have had these two teams ratings drift. Vikings to the poor, Niners to the good throughout the balance of this season. And when this game was originally lined and they opened the market in the preseason, it was Niners -1, right? And so that was telling you, any kind of preseason, rating of the players available in this game. I know Justin Jefferson's not playing, and I know he matters, but they have decent talent to backfill Justin Jefferson. And I still think that this Vikings team, particularly with Christian Darrisaw, who I think is playing at a top 3 level at tackle right now, that they can neutralize the pass rush of the Niners. And I think they can get their offense going in this contest. And so if they are having any modicum of success offensively, then they're going to keep this thing competitive. And I think that is ultimately where I come down here, which is, do I expect the Niners to win? Yes. Do I think the Niners are the better team? Obviously. But this is a big, big spread for a team that's on the road, that is now traveling across the country for the second straight week. They have a short week to prepare for a Bengals team that is, coming off a bias, and they have already on record that they're planning for the Bengals game at the same time they're planning for this Vikings game. So, you may get a little bit of a, kind of house divided in terms of, what people are planning for here. And I think ultimately the fact that the Vikings defense coming into this season, I had them rated bottom 5. There was very little hope that they were going to give you anything positive. And I honestly will tell you, what I've seen from them to this point in the season has me upgrading that unit. They're better than I thought they were. Their young players that they are using, particularly in their secondary, are playing better than I thought they would. Their pass rush can get home at times. And I think, ultimately the Niners are going to be fine. They're still probably your 1 seed in the NFC. Any bets you've made on the Niners outrights, coach, Shanahan coach, Purdy MVP, the team in general being kind of an absolute truck, I think is still relevant. But I also think this is one of those games where they get in and get out with a relatively narrow win, not a blow them out type of effort. And I think, there are 2 paths here for the Vikings to cover. One is they literally just play well enough out of the gate that this is a score and answer type of battle, and it's decided at the end stages, like every other Vikings game seems to be. Or the Niners are up early, and then they got to put their guys on ice because they don't want. They have a lot of guys who are dealing with injuries that they need to stay healthy throughout the season. Deebo Samuel not going in this one, so you're a little thin in the wide receiver room. And I think that ultimately, the Vikings coming through the back door is also still relatively possible with this big of a number. So Vikings plus the 7 points, that's a bet for me. And I think ultimately that's not my favorite play of the week by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that'll be a fun way to wrap up week 7.
Yep, I like the Vikings as well. Plus 7, that would certainly be the side that I'd be on. The defense, to your point, it's just solid. It's a solid middle of the pack unit after being pretty bad last year. I think Flores coming in has really changed that. Yeah. Seems like they've just gotten a little bit younger and a little bit more explosive. And also I like with an underdog when you have a profile like this defense does of just blitzing 50% of the time, just way more than anyone else, because just has to create more variance. If you're just sending more guys, more pressured plays is going to be more variance for both positive and negative plays. And when you're the underdog, you want to create that type of variance. I think ultimately why I agree that the Niners will pull this out is just because the fact that the weapons for Cousins, there's just not enough behind Jefferson. I don't think KJ Osborne's that good. I don't think Addison's ready. Hawkinson's been quietly kind of disappointing this season. So I think that ultimately they're just not going to have enough. They can't run the ball either. At some point it's going to flip from Madison to Akers. I would expect, because Madison has struggled so much. And then on the other side, Debo out is not ideal, but in a way, I think of their 4 big guns on offense in terms of McCaffrey, Ayuk, Kittle, and Debo, he's perhaps the most dispensable just because he is the guy who sometimes you forget he's playing because of the way that they use Ayuk's clearly Purdy's target. True, we can call Purdy a big gun as well. So I think between Ayuk, Kittle, and having McCaffrey back, I also think just where this team is at in the season, that if McCaffrey wasn't ready to be useful, they wouldn't just throw him out there. It's not like a Deshaun Cleveland situation where Cleveland really needed to win today. The Niners can get by against the Minnesota Vikings without Christian McCaffrey. So the fact that he is looking like he's going to play, and he is, the popular discourse, which is almost a meme now, is the idea that running backs don't matter, though they do. And the one who matters the most is Christian McCaffrey. Just looking at how the Niners, the defenses they face, like, you can't play zone defense against Christian McCaffrey because he just sits in those zones and he just destroys you with his ability as a receiver. So the fact that it looks like he is going to be good to go, I think will be very useful against a team that blitzes as much as Minnesota. Could definitely see McCaffrey adding a lot of value through the air. And so I think the Niners will win, but I don't think they will win by more than 7. All right. Before we get to the National Basketball Association, reminder the basketball season is here. There's still time to squeeze in your fantasy drafts. Get the Roto World Basketball Draft Guide, which includes all the rankings, player outlooks, and projections you need to win your league. Go to NBCsports.com to get your draft guide now and use code preseason25 to save 25% off and receive a $10 Fanatics gift card. Drew. All right, we'll talk NBA all through this week, but we're going to start off with MVP and Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year, I think we're pretty aligned. MVP, we might have a difference of opinion based on texting that we were doing the other night, but I don't think we disagree about the top guy. I think probably Jokic is plus 450. Giannis 6-1. Luka Doncic in just the kind of seemingly just earmarked every single year. Luka Doncic must be plus 600 for MVP, irrespective of circumstance. Tatum 7-1. Joel Embiid facing an uphill battle on a lot of fronts is 8-1. And then you get to Curry and Durant. And then Shea is kind of the next guy, but then you're starting to get into the long shot territory. So what do you make of this market?
So we do disagree a little bit just because I feel like this is Jokic to lose. I think that the current state of play in the NBA makes this a big to lose, right? I've really, really struggled to see how any type of guard or wing can do enough over the balance of the season to make themselves more valuable than the likes of a Jokic or a Giannis or an Embiid. Giannis and Embiid both have dings in their case coming into this season. Giannis in particular, I think, the degree to which he now shares the credit with, Dame Lillard that's a factor. It is. He may ultimately clearly be the best player on the Bucks. But I think that in general, it's a fragile team. I think they're going to lose regular season games that they should be winning in times because of how much they're trying to ask out of their 7th, 8th, and 9th best players. And I think ultimately, there's in the back of my head a little bit of concern that he's already kind of peaked as a player and that people know that and that they will penalize him for that. So I think Giannis is a little bit of a second tier candidate. And I think Embiid surely is a second tier candidate because he suffers from the same thing that people held against Jokic last year, which is that he has done nothing in the playoffs. And so if that was all you had standing on, if that was your way in to this award to beat Jokic, and now he has a championship, best of luck. Doncic is going to start the season with, carrying an injury, may not start the season, so he's going to drift. And I think Jokic, it's possible that Denver's not really like clearly in the driver's seat wire to wire for the 1 seed in the West, and so maybe there's going to be a buy low point on Jokic. But I look at this as 4-man race. Tatum, the outsider, as a 5th man, and going to end up betting Jokic. Probably singling Jokic in this market, but I want to see if we can maybe get a little bit of a somebody get hot early and really kind of move into favorite status for, take that away from Jokic, and then maybe we get a better price on him.
Yeah, I'll give extended thoughts, but my summary around this market would be that if Nikola Jokic cares about the regular season, I think he'll win MVP. And if he doesn't care, then I think Tatum or Giannis will win. And that's my tier 1. I think Embiid, between the Harden stuff, between the fact that he never plays 70 games in a season, so now he's only really got a few games of wiggle room to on top of his typical absence, the fact that he was terrible at the end of the Boston series and was getting blocked by Al Horford and was getting pep talks from PJ Tucker in the last 2 minutes of game 4 being like, wake up, Joel. Meanwhile, the guy that he won MVP from is now a made man and universally considered the best player in basketball, perhaps tier 1 by himself. And so I think that with Jokic, I just think he's the best player. 2, he's very durable, unlike guys like Embiid and Giannis and Curry and Durant. So I think the durability aspect favors Jokic and Tatum over everyone else. But when I talk about not caring for him, I mean, he just won the finals. Never been to the finals before. Does that does he treat the regular season in a different way? And I don't buy the idea, like there's this popular idea that Nikola Jokic just wants to, hang out with his horses in Serbia and doesn't care about the MVP. He absolutely cares about the MVP.
Oh, yes, he does.
If you want to see someone, I've seen very few people play with the intensity that Jokic did in the regular season game against Milwaukee in the third last week of the season last year. He was going at Brook Lopez and Giannis like it was game 7 of the finals. And he was defending Giannis and taking charges. Like he was all in on that game. He definitely cares about that stuff. I'm just not sure if he cares for a duration of a season. The way that you divide Jokic in terms of caring or not is just whether he chooses to score or not. And there is a chance, I think, that he's just like, I'm just going to average 23 and 10. And that's me done. I don't need to push to average, 25, 12 and 11 or whatever. I will just kind of take a back seat, really kind of engage as a scorer late in games or in big games, and you just won't have the profile overall for a team as well that is kind of lacking in depth. And I'm not sure they're going to be the 1 seed again. Certainly they're a dog against the field there. So those are the things working against Jokic. Things working for him is that he's the best player, and if he really wants it, then he can probably just get it. But Tatum, who I think he's the most interesting guy to talk about, just because the Celtics have the highest win total of everyone. They have, I think, the best chance, clearly, to just finish 5-6 wins in front of the league and be regarded as the clear best team. And Tatum is their clear MVP candidate. No one else is even close. But the refrain on Tatum would be that he's just not quite that good in a way. And he's better than Devin Booker, but in a way like Devin Booker is not quite MVP good. And that's why Devin Booker didn't get to win when the Suns finished 8 games or whatever in front of everyone. My counter to that would be that Jason Tatum just turned 25, so he can get better. And he has one area clearly as a playmaker where he can make strides, which I think will help the case. And then if you're like, well, he's just not quite that good. Well, there's only 3 guys clearly better than him. Jokic, who we talked about, Giannis, who has got issues, as we mentioned, and then Embiid, who's got even bigger issues. So I think, what do you think the path is for Tatum to win MVP?
I'm against it just because I feel like there are a number. I guess look, I get your points are all fair. It is still true though that Jokic gets to play half of his regular season games with an enormous home court advantage. Like that matters, right? And I think the fact that Tatum, to me, I don't think that people are dying to put him ahead of a lot of other candidates who could have a good season in the West. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. Like if the Suns run away with the 1 seed in the West, Durant, I think, beats out Tatum. If the Warriors run away with the 1 seed in the West, I think Curry beats Tatum, because people just have anchored that these guys are better players than Tatum is. And so until he gets finals MVP type of recognition with the Celtics winning a title, I think that people are going to keep him on the outside of the discussion of a player who can be considered for this award. That's just my gut. And if the Celtics are 6 wins clear of the field in terms of all NBA team wins, then I will eat these words. But I think that there are too many other outs that he could be your second choice.
Yeah. And the thing, Tatum has never played at an MVP level. Like, he was 61% true shooting last year, and that's the highest mark of his career. At the same time, he was a +6 EPM when he was 23 years old, and he has room to get better. So it's difficult because Jokic doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to be Jokic. Embiid and Giannis, they don't need to do anything. They just need to be themselves. Tatum actually needs to get better as a player and make a leap that we haven't seen. So I get the nervousness on that front. And that's why I agree. I think Curry, who you can get in the 20-1 type range, as Mike McDaniel sprints into the tunnel again, and Kevin Durant in the 25-1 type range. I don't think either of those guys are going to win MVP, but at those prices, I think it's a little bit big. Yeah. Let's get to Rookie of the Year because to tie up MVP, I think we both agree the best value on the board is just Jokic. I think that should be closer to +300 tops, and he's much bigger than that everywhere. And then those long shots, Curry and Durant are interesting, and I don't mind Tatum. It's not super exciting at the +800 that's out there, but I don't mind him there. Victor Wembanyama is -145 for Rookie of the Year. If you shop around, you get closer to even money. Chet Holmgren's +350. Scoot Henderson is +450, and then Brandon Miller's 30-1. Can you talk me out of my current idea, which is just that Wembanyama should be -250?
No. The rest of the pool is dead money.
Agreed. All right. Well, it's fun, everyone.
I honestly, I thought the buzz was going to be louder after what we've seen from him in the preseason so far. Like, you don't want to overreact, but like, he clearly is ready to dominate at the NBA level. This is not going to be growing pains. I don't know what else you need to see.
I think it is more likely that Wembanyama makes the All-Star team than it is he loses Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Bet on those kind of outcomes. I just think that the guy played at a level in France. I get that it's the French league, but there are ways to kind of translate this stuff now. And I think the level that he played at, I would just be stunned I think this is purely a bet on health. And then the 10 to 15% outlier chance that maybe he's just not that good and it's all been a lie so far. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that this is a simplified way to view it, and these markets are not very efficient. But the points per game over-unders for Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, I think Wembanyama in the market is at 18 points per game and Chet's at 12.5. And so why were they neck and neck to win? And Wembanyama has more pedigree as a player and more upside, and he's going to have louder numbers in other categories. I don't understand this at all. I think that it's basically a bet on him playing 52 games, and then that'll be enough because there is no 65-game requirement for this award. There's no one I even like as a long shot. I think it's Wembanyama, and if it's not Wembanyama, then I think it's probably Chet. I think Scoot Henderson is going to be very inefficient on a bad team and is going to be kind of damaging to winning basketball. And most rookies are. It's not like Paolo was a huge impetus for winning basketball last year, but I think Scoot is not even going to be at that level. And then these other guys like Miller, Thompson, Whitmore, they're just not going to win. It's the best that I can gauge. So for me, it's just Wembanyama, and Holmgren's the only other guy who I think can win, but he's no bet at the price.
Yeah, I think if you get opportunities to get some stakes on Wembanyama throughout the season in the pick'em range, you do it every time you can. And then we have a good laugh at how this was ever even a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, the players it's a Wembanyama, Jokic, Mahomes, parlay.
Yeah. And I think your point is especially fair in that it's more likely that he's a top 20 player. I think it's more likely he makes an all-NBA team than it is that he loses this award.
Yeah, I'm not that opposed to that idea, to be honest. I think that's neck and neck. But certainly, I think All-Star is very, very much in play.
Yeah.
You don't want to get too caught into the George Pickens TikTok training camp highlight catch stuff in preseason with Wembanyama, but people just don't do what he did in that preseason game to Andrew Wiggins, where it starts on the left baseline and just locks him up multiple times, then just devours his shot.
Was that even his top 5 highlight of him from the preseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I think he's going to be a all D level defensive player. I don't think he's the defensive player of the year candidate just because I don't think the team's going to be good enough defensively. And he's still a kid, but I do think he's going to have a plus defensive impact, while then also I don't think he's going to be super efficient on offense, but you don't need to be to win this award. And he's going to get his counting stats and the highlights, and he's going to be one of the greatest players of all time, health willing, and he's going to win Rookie of the Year, barring a catastrophe. All right. We are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.